Welcome to another edition of Our City. A few things going around the city of Elizabeth this week. On Saturday, March 20th, I'm going to attend the Rotary Club's Pancake Breakfast. It will be held at the Benedictine Academy, located at 840 North Broad Street, and the Rotary uses this as a major fundraiser. So I encourage all of you to come out and eat some pancakes at Benedictine Academy. For more information, call 908-355-2060. Later that evening, the Portuguese Instructive Social Club will have their 93rd anniversary reception. Will be held at the Portuguese Instructive Social Club on Route 1 in the city of Elizabeth. It's dinner, music, and a great show for all to enjoy. For more information, you can call Ms. Carla Rodriguez of the Portugal Day Committee at 908-347-4209. If you need any more information concerning these events or any other events, please call our Public Information Office at 908-820-4124. And I'll be pleased to be joined by Assemblywoman Annette Quijano after these messages.
Sometimes you learn by helping others learn. Kane University.
Welcome back to Our City. I'm pleased to be joined by the Assemblywoman of the 20th District, Assemblywoman Annette Quijano. Assemblywoman, welcome to the show.
It's great to see you, Mayor.
So have we done this before?
I don't remember.
I don't think so. You might have been on with Alonzo.
I think we did something with the gardens.
Right.
Yes.
So tell us, first of all, a little bit about yourself. You're an attorney. You've been in the city of Elizabeth forever, right?
Well, yes. I've been in Elizabeth. I feel like I'm one of the cheerleaders for Elizabeth.
There you go.
When I travel nationally to talk about Homeland Security issues and Superstorm Sandy, I am so proud to say that I'm from Elizabeth, New Jersey.
You have a law degree?
Yes.
Attorney, worked as chief of staff to Senator Lesniak, and now you're in the Assembly. So how did it go from being staffer to now being the elected representative?
Well, it was wonderful. I had quite a few different positions. I also was clerk of the Freeholder Board, so I learned county government. I was a commissioner on the Congressional Redistricting Commission. So I have learned from different federal, county. It is different, but yet it's the same, because prior to going to the Assembly, I was only down the hall at the governor's office, and I served 3 Democratic governors as an assistant governor's counsel. So the legislation that I work on now is really almost the reverse of what I used to do in the governor's office. We would wait until legislation was introduced, and then we would talk with the sponsor if we had any amendments or any suggestions to make it a better bill.
Tell us about the Congressional Redistricting Committee. A lot of people don't know what that is, but you actually were inside the room when the lines were drawn.
Well, it was the most fascinating time of my life. I was in the room with 5 other Democrats, so I was the 6th one. And at that time, there were 6 Republicans and 6 Democrats appointed. Then we had a tiebreaker, Dr. Alan Rosenthal, who has since passed away. We were there and we got to see the computer layouts of the lines, how they moved. There was criteria that had to be followed about certain number of voters being in those districts. And then you could see just how those lines were formed.
So what year did you serve on that?
That was in the 90s.
In the 90s?
Yes.
And Dr. Rosenthal was there. He was a tiebreaker for a lot of years.
Yes, he was.
And so when you did that, it was not an acrimonious situation, was it?
Well, no. I mean, the Democratic map didn't win that year.
It did not?
No, it did not. It was the Republican map that won. Okay. I was disappointed because I don't think that we should use the number of individuals that are in prison to make a better map for people to vote when those individuals, in fact, can't vote. So that year, the Democratic map did not win.
That's a criteria that was used as part of the weight of the...
Well, they're counted. They are counted in the overall number.
Interesting.
And so that's why...
I don't think people know that.
No, people don't know that. But the thing is, the question is, should the individual be counted where they are serving their time, or should they be counted where they lived? it makes a difference in the numbers and where the lines are moved.
You could have a couple hundred people living in one area, and then all of a sudden, they get counted in that area. It sure does shift the numbers.
Yes, and unfortunately, we have too many people serving time right now.
So, Assemblywoman, what made you get into public office? You were always behind the scenes, and then you're now the Assemblywoman for what, 6 years, 8 years?
6.5.
6.5.
I've been blessed to be reelected 3 times from the voters of this district. I think it has to do with everything I did in my previous years, working in the governor's office, being chief of staff for Senator Lesniak. I also served as a board member and the youngest vice president of an organization called the Puerto Rican Congress. And serving on that redistricting commission showed me as a woman, as an attorney, as a Hispanic, that I could give voice to the voiceless.
So your heritage is Puerto Rican?
Yes, I am Puerto Rican.
And so that has given you a certain view on some issues, especially in an area that is dominated by many different Hispanic groups.
Yes, well, the thing is, I lived firsthand. I had a untraditional upbringing. My mother was divorced at the age of when I was 2, and she raised me by herself, along with my grandparents. And I was the person, because I spoke English, who would go to the hospitals and who, when my grandparents were sick, would have to speak for them. And so I know also what it is to be uninsured. I have lived that life. I had to have surgery. My mother just didn't have enough money to pay for health insurance. Sometimes it's, the house or food, so or insurance. So you have to make your choices. And it was only because she had a good relationship with our primary physician, who lived across the street from us, that we were able to, she was able to negotiate a payment plan, which was unheard of back then.
It's interesting you say about an untraditional upbringing. Last week's show was your running mate, Assemblyman Jamel Holly, who also talked about his upbringing, which was somewhat different than what has been known as traditional upbringing. And his quote was, "Your childhood does not have to define your adulthood," which I found interesting.
That is, and I absolutely agree with him. Where my fellow students would go home after school, I would go to my mother's beauty shop. And so it was fascinating because there were so many women from different parts of the country, people that believed different, had different religions and had different walks of life. And they all were, I would say, my kitchen cabinet from a young age. And they were my cheerleaders who said I could do anything I wanted, as well as my mother. In high school, I was told when I answered the question, what do you want to be when you grow up? And I had answered an attorney. I was told by a high school counselor that I shouldn't aspire so high. And at that moment, I just looked, because I'm like, okay, this is a high school counselor. Does he know something about me, since he sees what, my tests, my grades, that I couldn't succeed? Or is it he's just making that assumption based on the fact that I was a granddaughter of a farm worker and my mother was divorced? So I went home. He didn't realize that I had a secret weapon at home, and that was my mother. And I still believe my mother is the most intelligent woman I have ever met.
She must have loved that conversation, huh?
Oh, she said, you and I will decide together as a family what you are able to do in the future. And she made a contract with me. All I had to do was study, and she would work as hard as she could, and she would put the money aside for me to be able to go to college.
Sounds like the base of a political career, that conversation, because that talks about choices, and it talks about the difficult choices too to be made. Mm-hmm. So what's one of the things that you have found most satisfying being an elected official?
Well, I can highlight issues such as hunger, domestic violence, ovarian cancer, which sometimes get lost in everyday life. Being an Assemblywoman, when I volunteered to make sandwiches at the Elizabeth Coalition for the Homeless and asked for other volunteers, it is so rewarding to see other people coming to help, and then to come another week to help. I've done different projects. We're doing a breast cancer seminar. I've helped with the ovarian cancer, just getting the awareness out for individuals of all colors, because none of those issues are just for Latinos. They affect everyone.
And the demographics could be higher or lower depending on ethnicity in some areas as well.
Yes, and on the breast cancer seminar that we do at Trinitas, we actually have bilingual doctors there. So if an individual wants and needs to hear the information in Spanish, they're able to hear it in Spanish.
You know, that's a really good point you just raised from my perspective, is sometimes people don't have access to health care due to the simplicity of not understanding the language. And that is really sad in this country.
Yes, when I speak about going to the hospital and being the translator as a child, knowing nothing about medical terms, I wonder what happens to those individuals that don't have a child or a grandchild or a friend to take them to the hospital. One word can make the difference of life and death.
And in your situation, you've helped bridge that gap.
I have done it for my family, and I've done it for friends.
So public programs, what are you most interested in championing?
Well, my grandfather came here as a farm worker, and I learned the value of the land.
Was he a farm worker in Puerto Rico before he came here, or?
Yes.
That's what he did when he got here? No,
yes, and the thing is, the government of Puerto Rico had a program with New Jersey, so I would have not only my grandfather, but the men of the family would come over for the season. And so in my family, we will have a tomato garden in our backyard always to remember how we got here and how we succeeded.
Nutrition's been a big issue with you, though, from
Yes.
the time you got to the Assembly. And it's probably because of your background. But tell us about some of the things you've done with nutrition with Jewish Family Services and other organizations.
I am so excited about the program, Come Grow With Us Union County, that is administered by Groundwork Elizabeth. What we do is we don't just tell people what they have to do. We ask them, what do you have so that their skills can come into the group and we can plant a garden in different places. So we think outside of the box. So in the Jewish Family Services, they have on the front yard and side lawn of their offices, they have been able to produce over 1,000 pounds of food every year, which is amazing in a city.
And they may get more this year.
Yes, every year. Well, they get more volunteers. Right. And what's the beauty of is that no one steals it. And it's okay if someone is hungry. They would just like someone to register, but no one has, done any. There's been no vandalism. It's been respected, and individuals, when they get the fresh produce, they are very happy.
Assemblywoman, if you could stay with us, we're going to run a few commercials and come back and talk more about your career in the 20th District. Please stay with us. Please stay with us, and I'll be back more with Assemblywoman Annette Quijano.
We're an American original, dependable, historic, nuanced, with all the comforts of home, even when you're just visiting. So we're celebrating for all that we've left untouched and all that we've changed. A place where the past meets the future. So consider this your invitation.
We've been celebrating here in Elizabeth for 350 years, and we're just getting started. Welcome back to our city, where I'm joined by the Assemblywoman from the 20th District, Assemblywoman Annette Quijano. Assemblywoman, one of the things we were talking about at the break is the Are You Ready program. So who came up with the first idea? How does that work? Tell us about the Are You Ready program.
Well, Mayor, do you remember a few years ago there was a blackout in Elizabeth?
I do.
I was in court, and no one knew what happened, but we had lost electricity. When I arrived home, my neighbors were all upset. They had no clue what was going on. They didn't know how to get information. They were very upset. And there was, I have young neighbors and I have mature neighbors. And so
That's a nice way to put it.
Well, we're all maturing in our own way. So I thought about it as Assembly Chair of Homeland Security and State Preparedness. How can we get our neighbors ready for any kind of emergency? And so I talked with the American Red Cross, and I partnered with them, and I also partnered with the United Way of Greater Union County. And we came up with this Are You Ready presentation, which walks people through how to prepare for any kind of emergency.
And you've worked with the Red Cross and the United Way for a couple of years now and been very successful with those organizations in educating, how did you say, the more mature population and the younger population, right?
Yes, we try to train people from all walks of life. The thing is, most people don't realize you need to get a kit, which is also known as an emergency go bag. And the thing is, if you're traveling, commuting to work, well, you should have one in your car. If you should also have one in your house for each member of your family. And if you are advised from...
Tell us what should be in that kit. A bottle of water, a flashlight. What should be in that kit?
Okay. Think of it as if you were leaving your house, what would you need? So you would need water, at least a gallon for each day you're going to be out. You would need canned goods and also the can opener. A lot of people forget that one.
Oh, that's right.
But you also need to know what medication you're taking. So we advise the mature audience that takes quite a few medications to make sure they put the bottles in a bag and just put in their emergency go bag. Because if they're evacuated, then the American Red Cross or the first responders could be helpful in getting their medication as long as they know. I tell them, you can't say I take a pink pill. That's just not going to be good enough. Also, sorry to say it, but toilet paper, you would want to make sure you had that in case you were evacuated. You would also want, if you have children, things for them to look at, books to read, games, coloring books, things to help them occupy their time so that they're not restless or have time to even think that they're not even home.
And legislation, as the chair of the Homeland Security and Preparedness Committee, you've had an effect on legislation over the last 6 years. Tell us about your efforts in filing legislation and how you've succeeded in getting some things adopted.
Well, in terms of the Homeland Security, we've done quite a few bills. One has to do with healthcare facilities, making sure that they are generator ready or any other source ready if there's an emergency. There was a problem that dealt with that they would have to be 100% up if there was an emergency, if there was a blackout. But the thing is, if you have a physical therapy pool that's not used during an emergency, why would you have to light that up? You don't need electricity for that part of the hospital. So we were successful in getting a bill out that would give them the option. We also worked on a bill that would give the option to gasoline station owners, especially on the evacuation route. The administration has provided some programs, and there's a bill that's sitting in Senate that should be passing shortly on that. We also, and this is something that people don't realize, a lot of people refuse to leave their homes during an emergency because they don't want to leave their animals. They're part of the family too. And so it wasn't until I introduced legislation that would allow animals in cages under the control of their owner to be able to board a New Jersey Transit or any other transportation vehicles that we are using during an emergency to take them with them because they are part of their families.
Now, living around Newark Airport, you're also instrumental in preparing legislation dealing with the issue of drones that are now more and more populous in society.
Well, last year we passed a bill that had to do with drones, and we gave the framework to first responders, firemen, and police. Now we're looking at drones commercially used in the U.S. airspace. The FAA has given awarded New Jersey as one of the 6 sites, along with Maryland and Virginia, to study drones on a commercial basis. Drones are not our enemy, but we have to make sure that we know who is flying the drones. And the fact is, we need to register and insure drones, the unmanned vehicles. And I have legislation that I'm introducing that will do that. The thing is, if a drone falls out of the air or the sky and hits an individual and hurts them, who pays? Right now, there's no insurance policies required on any of those drones.
And a lot of them are out there taking pictures of landscape, taking pictures of property, whatever they do, right?
Yes, we're looking at that also. I'm introducing legislation that would make it a crime for anyone to fly a drone over any of our critical infrastructures, which bridges, airports, our port,
Right. So Assemblyman Holly, who was on the show last week, had some strong opinions regarding the issue that's been in the news lately on the Exxon settlement from $9 billion to $225 million. You've also expressed it through social media, some strong opinions. Please tell us about those.
Well, I was concerned if we don't, as a state, receive enough money to fix the damage that has been done in the area, then it's going to fall on all the taxpayers. I just don't think it really passes the smell test. The state, when they went to court, filed that it would cost the $8.9 billion.
Big number.
It is a humongous number. And they got to that, figuring out the damages, the marshes, the waters, everything like that. To then negotiate pennies on the dollar of $225 million. And that's also a big number. But I don't think it's big enough to help clean the environment.
No, I think it's just going to be used for the general revenue, for the general budget, right?
There is a possibility that it gets used to the general fund. I really think that polluters should pay for polluting.
Driver's license. You filed a bill about Tell us about this bill and how it impacts the residents of our city.
Well, the driver's license bill that I introduced started the conversation. We have to make sure we know who is driving on the roads in New Jersey. And I mean more than just an identity. We have to make sure that individuals know what are the laws in the state of New Jersey, pass a driving test, register their cars, and pay for car insurance. Driving has become a necessity. It's no longer a privilege. And now I'm looking at the state of California as a model. As of January 1st of this year, they have provided driver's licenses for individuals that cannot prove a lawful presence in the country.
And what do you think? What do you think that you can get a driver's license for that?
In California right now, they are processing applications.
Right. And we do not in New Jersey.
No, we do not.
And it's a way to identify people.
Well, it's a way to identify people, but also there's individuals that are involved in accidents. And you want to make sure that if you paid your insurance, you want to make sure that the individual that may have hit you also has insurance.
You seem to enjoy filing legislation, which is the job of a legislator. But the process of getting legislation adopted can be cumbersome. How do you work with other members of the Assembly in order to move things forward?
Well, I love working with all the different Assembly members. They have different perspectives. I learn every time I speak with them about their perspectives and different issues. Yes, you do have to work with your colleagues, but then you look to see who has also the same kind of interests. We did a domestic violence series of bills. It was different female Assemblywomen, but there was also men there too. Everyone in the Assembly has the ability to file legislation. I file as much legislation as I do because of constituents and different groups that come to me to ask me, can you consider filing a bill? But there are bills, I can tell you one that has been over 10 years, which has spanned at the time that I was in Governor's Council to a little while ago, which was allowing the widows of state policemen and firemen and first responders to continue to collect the benefits, even if they remarried. And you would think in this day and age you would not expect, well, if you got remarried, you're not getting any more benefits. The point was the fireman or the policeman or the first responder died in the line of duty, and we as a state should continue to support the family.
They may have some children or something.
Yes, it's for the children.
Right.
It's to make sure the children
have
have an opportunity that they would have if their parent didn't die.
So before we closed last week with Assemblyman Holly, we talked about how to contact you. And I think it's important that the residents of Elizabeth exactly know how they can reach their Assemblywoman. So how do they reach out to you?
Well, I am located in the old motor vehicles office at 65 Jefferson, Suite B, which is the lower level. And our phone numbers in the office is 908-327-9119. So the number is 908-327-9119.
Assemblywoman, I want to thank you for taking the time to join us on the show this evening, and I look forward to working with you not only in your campaign, but also in your service to the residents of the 20th District.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. For Assemblywoman Annette Quijano, I'm Chris Ballwage, and we'll see you next week on another edition of Our City.
Why do we like it here? Let's just say the reasons are diverse. Kane University.